Hello and welcome to Gender Forking. A show where we talk about Twilight and gender through the lens of life and death by Stephenie Meyer. I'm your host, Lori.
And I'm Sam. I was just wondering, does anyone love this book?
Whomst out there is like, this is my favorite book because, do I feel that way about Twilight? Yes. This book,
Unclear. It's
Unclear,
I love it, but because it's Twilight.
Yeah. I feel like I'm contractually obligated to like this book.
It does not exist in a vacuum.
Right. Wait, could you imagine if someone had never had any, exposure to the Twilight series or the saga in any way, and they started with Life and Death?
Yes, what's the forecast?
The forecast is, today in Forks, it is 53 degrees and cloudy. Sunrise 5:26 a.m., sunset 8:59 p.m.
Today's episode, we'll decide on a name later. I think it'll become more clear. But we read chapters 8 through 10 of Life and Death, and we have a lot to say about that.
I read the chapters first because we're sharing one copy of the book, and as soon as I read them, I was like, Sam, come home right now and read this book. This is where the most obvious differences between Twilight have made themselves clear in so far.
It's so clear. It feels very different. Let's jump right into it because I have a lot to say.
Let's just go.
So chapter 8, Port Angeles. This is the chapter in Twilight where Bella goes dress shopping, or she accompanies her friends Jessica and Angela dress shopping because they're going to a dance, and she wants to, go to a bookstore or something. And I think it's important that we review what happens in Twilight before we talk about the differences. So Bella
makes a wrong turn and gets a little bit lost walking around Port Angeles after she goes to the bookstore, and she comes across a group of men who it is implied and written that are about to assault her and possibly murder her, then is rescued by Edward coming up in his stupid Volvo, and then they go to meet up with Jessica and Angela, and Edward is like, hey, I really think that Bella should have some dinner, so I'm gonna keep her and I'll drive her home. And Jessica and Angela, horrible friends, are like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We don't know anything about you, but we're gonna leave our friend with you. So.
There's a lot there in Twilight that we'll probably unpack tangentially to this. I was really curious as to how Stephenie Meyer was going to unfold this part of Life and Death in a gender-swapped way.
Yeah.
But here we go. Let's just start at the beginning. So the reason they have gone to Port Angeles has changed. They are not shopping for
dresses,
clothes at all. They're going to get corsages for their dates and to see a movie.
Which is that is not...
It's not an equivalent.
It's not an equivalent. It's
whatever.
Fine. Whatever. Yeah. It gets them there. It serves the purpose of the plot, I suppose.
And reading that and sort of reading the decisions that they make while they're in Port Angeles, especially in relation to shopping, it made me think about what Stephenie Meyer has decided is gendered or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, going shopping for clothes would never happen, I guess, for these boys, but Julie Black is super into cars.
Yeah. She's like, that's, cool and, subversive.
Yeah.
But, these boys cannot shop.
So, I wonder, it almost... I haven't been paying attention enough to, notice is it true or not, but, it feels like maybe it's more possible for the characters that have been swapped to women to do the things that their characters originally did than the other way around.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to be as... I think that happens with Beau a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that because he's the main character, he's still doing a lot of the same stuff because he's tied to the plot.
Yeah. And I think that holds true for, Eleanor, who's still, as we've heard through a couple comments in here, is still projected to be the strongest out of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's interesting that she allowed her to keep that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that, the smaller, the details that were gendered are being changed, but not some of the other stuff. So it's really interesting.
Maybe it has to do with, the personalities and, what's core to someone's, character and personality. So, I think that,
for Emmett,
For them, it's, yeah. And then maybe, like, going dress shopping wasn't integral to who Jessica and Angela were. But it's like, you don't have to change that. Like, it seems like work. Also interesting that they split up after dress shopping, and that's when Beau goes off alone. The other two go to a video game store.
Yeah, they go to a video game store. I don't know what they do in Twilight.
Yeah, it's like, y'all go into, like, GameStop? Like, or you go to Port Angeles to go to GameStop? Like,
there's a lot there.
Okay,
I think that kind of comes up more later, but... So, Beau decides that he doesn't want to go to GameStop, and he wants to go to a bookstore, I think, but he, like Bella, gets turned around and can't find his way back. So there was this part in the first chapter of Life and Death. She adds this section where Beau is first getting to the airport. He's with Charlie, and Beau, like, accidentally, like, bumps into this guy and this girl.
Tattoos?
Yeah, like, this very, like, Stephenie Meyer describes what they look like, and it's, like, this kind of confrontational thing where they get mad at him, but then they notice that he's with a cop, so they back off. And I was like, that's really weird.
Yeah, I thought it was just, like, a character development choice or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sure if it was relevant, but it is relevant because Stephenie Meyer has replaced the gang of like rapists in Twilight with a group of men and women who are, I don't know, a gang maybe? Criminals, drugs, I don't know. They have guns.
Beau, like, questionably, like, walks by them and is like, I don't know what they're holding, but one of them shoved it into their pants, and I was like...
Yeah, so he, like, turns around, and then they follow him, and they think that he saw something that he shouldn't have seen, and then the woman recognizes him and thinks that he's a cop because he was with a cop.
Yeah, so they think he's an undercover cop, and he's like, please, I am just a teenage boy.
Yeah.
And
for some reason, their reaction is to attack this cop.
Yeah. I think that their plan was to kill the cop.
Yeah.
And also, when they're like, well, maybe if he's, like, a cop...
His dad's a cop.
A cop, and we're gonna get, like, ratted on. And so they are literally about to murder Beau.
Yeah, with guns. A couple of them have guns.
Yeah.
It's the men with... I feel like... Isn't it the men with the guns, though?
I think so. I do think it's interesting,
but
though,
the woman is in charge.
Like... there are women present in this gang, because that is, like, a definite change from Twilight, when there were no women in this group that attacked Bella.
It was all men, and now it's still mostly men.
It's mostly men, but there are also, like, women added in, which is so strange.
And it seems like that woman is supposed to be in charge, which I didn't pick up on at all until later in the chapter where they are at dinner. Beau and Edith are at dinner, and Edith is talking about that woman's thoughts. Yeah. And things that she was thinking. And I was like, it doesn't really seem like she was in charge, but okay.
Yeah. I don't know what was going on there. Like, I don't know why they chose to maybe include the men in that way, because, like, if it was truly, like, #gender swapped.
Yeah.
Like,
it would have been all women.
It would have been all women.
But we know, and I think even Stephenie Meyer knows, that, like, that is so unrealistic.
Yeah. Like, to have a group of violent, organized women, like
doing
your face
what
could
to
never.
this
like,
teenage boy.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I think she knows it's unrealistic, but it's like, okay, then you admit that the story is different if the genders are swapped.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Very weird. So, like, my first reaction to, like, reading that section, I was like, wait, he's getting targeted because of his association with someone who's police.
And, like, not even police in Port Angeles. Police in Forks.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah, well, I guess they would have met in didn't he fly into Port Angeles?
Oh, yeah.
Did he fly into Forks?
Flown into Port Angeles, there's no airport in Forks, but, like, also, like, why?
Yeah, it was weird. And the thing is, there is no equivalent to sexual assault for men, because men also get sexually assaulted, so it's, like, weird that this was, like, it is weird that this was swapped, but it also isn't weird. I don't know, like, that she chose to have a different situation.
I think it's telling that Stephenie Meyer is like, well, what could I do to this male character that is as bad as sexual assault, but sexual assault never crosses her mind as the answer.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not gonna have this male character get sexual assaulted because men don't get like assaulted.
Because rape happens in alleyways with, like, people that you never met before, but that only happens to women. Yeah.
It was just an interesting choice, because it totally, like, the absence of the threat of sexual violence is, like, very... It changes a lot of what Bella... Like, it changes a lot of, like, what Beau is as compared to like what Bella has experienced.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if this will be the same case for Royal.
Yes.
If maybe Royal will just be like left at the altar or something like that.
Yeah.
Because like if Stephenie Meyer's not allowing this to happen to Beau, then I don't think that she'll allow it to happen to Royal.
Yeah.
Though it would be really cool to see Royal dressed up in a wedding dress go murder his ex-fiance.
So obviously, like, that's super strange. I think there's a lot going on there in that decision that Stephenie Meyer made to not include sexual assault.
Yeah.
I knew that she wasn't going to include sexual assault. Again, it's interesting what she decides is gendered and what isn't gendered.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Edith comes and saves the day in her shiny Volvo.
Shout out to Edith.
Shout out to Edith. There was a lot in the second part of the chapter, like after that almost attack, that I thought was incredibly interesting and rich. And this happens in Twilight 2. Edith/Edward like wanting to get out of the car and like kill these people because they're so upset about what the almost attackers are saying about Beau/Bella or thinking about them rather. And in Life and Death on page 120, Beau says that he would get out of the car if Edith did.
Yeah.
And like he's like, I'm not going anywhere without you. Like, you're not doing anything without me. I don't think that happens in Twilight, but we can check.
I don't think so either. And I also noted that he grabs on to Edith's arm.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that in Twilight. And also throughout the rest of the chapter while they're in the car, they're holding hands, which I very much don't remember from Twilight, having just read Midnight Sun.
Yeah.
Because I know Edward would have been thinking about that a lot. And, like, I don't remember that at all. And I'm wondering if it's... What it made me, like, wonder is if Stephenie Meyer is thinking, like, well, men are the ones that initiate physical contact, so it makes sense that Edward would not reach out and touch Bella because he doesn't want to cross the boundary and, like, make it harder for himself, whereas... Beau has been having these problems in this chapter with impeding on Edith's personal space and her being overwhelmed with like his scent and whatever, and like he's the one initiating the contact. He's the one like putting his hand on top of hers
continuously,
which is so interesting.
Yeah. So different. That happens a lot throughout the chapter. And then they go to dinner. In Twilight, Edward is like, as we said, Edward thinks that Bella should get something to eat because she just had this very traumatic experience. And she does. They go to this restaurant. In Life and Death, they do go to dinner, but it reads much more like a date.
Yeah. And it's like mentioned even.
It's mentioned. Edith is like, Edith asks Jeremy and Alan, she says like, would you mind if like I have Beau take me to dinner?
Yeah.
And then Beau's like thinking like,
oh my god,
I have to go on a date. Like, but also he's like, I've been on group dates. And Bella never went on group dates.
No,
she's never been out with anyone.
No. Bella existed in a house for 17 years and then she was released upon the world and she has never interacted with another person before.
Yeah, especially not a man.
Yeah. Anyway, it read a lot like a date.
Yeah, I mean,
explicitly.
And a very, like, a lot of the gendered aspects of a date are coming out, too. Like, Beau trying to open the door for her. And, like, I mean, Edith, even though she pays at the end, phrased it like Beau is taking me to dinner.
Right.
There's also, like, an interesting sense of autonomy that Beau has in the situation that Bella didn't have because his friends are still in Port Angeles at the movie while he's at dinner, and he could still go home with them.
Right.
Or join them.
Right.
But... in Twilight, Bella doesn't have another way
like
home.
They are literally leaving.
Yeah.
So her option is Edward.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about the scarf.
Yeah, let's talk about the scarf.
So in Twilight, Edward mentions that like, oh, like Bella looks cold, and she had left her jacket in Jessica's car, and in this, the equivalent is that Edith notices Beau looking cold and is like, oh, like, where's your jacket? He's like, oh, it's in Jeremy's car. And she's like, well, here, have my scarf. But then she's like, don't worry. It's not a lady's scarf.
It's Archie's.
Which is so wild and goes without saying that that's wild. Yeah. But also, it's interesting because it gives a nod that Archie is going to be the fashionable.
Yeah, she does mention it.
One.
She says like he has the best taste.
Yeah, he has the best taste.
Yeah. It's interesting that she even makes a comment like that. I mean, she makes a couple of really great comments like that throughout the dinner, but it's like, who is it for? Like, is it for us, the reader, or is it actually for Beau, who's like claiming not to be emasculated by things like that?
Yeah, I wonder too. Like,
also, like, when you're cold, like, a scarf doesn't help that much.
no, and I was like, I'm picturing him, and, like, later on, Charlie says that the scarf looks goofy.
Yeah.
But I'm picturing him in, like, a short sleeve, like, t-shirt, which is what he's been described as wearing in the past, and just, like, a long scarf. Tell me what a lady scarf is, first of all.
Seriously.
Like...
It's a scarf.
It's a scarf. And, like, also, I just have lots of thoughts. And, like, questionably, like, doesn't know how to put on a scarf, which is, like, #relatable, because Phoenix, like, you don't need a scarf there.
Yeah.
But, like, I want to know how bad Beau fucked up putting this scarf on.
He wrapped it around his neck until there was
ran
nothing
out.
else.
This waiter that is waiting on them, who thinks Edith is the most beautiful creature, is probably sitting there like, the fuck is this boy doing wearing a scarf like that?
Waiter.
Yeah, I'm the waiter. Yeah.
They start to have the conversation, which is continued in chapter 9, about Edith being a vampire and reading minds and stuff like that, and they're figuring that out. It's
very similar.
It's very similar because it's just logistical stuff. It's like the actual plot, and the plot doesn't matter. So,
right.
But there is like one other really, really hilarious addition to this part, which comes at the end of chapter 8. Let's read it.
Okay.
Yes, they're finishing the dinner, and Beau is under the impression that he's paying because Edith said he was paying.
Yeah.
And then, so he's like, you didn't even let me, like, get anything, and she says, my treat, Beau, and she says, try not to get caught up in antiquated gender roles.
And I'm like, Stephenie, are you talking to us? Is that, like, one of the, like, break the fourth wall moments?
Yeah.
Like, try not to get caught up in, like, antiquated gender roles. I was like...
It's like, how dare you?
Shut up.
Yeah, how dare you? This is your problem. You did this to yourself.
Yeah, you literally chose to write this book because...
You made him wear a scarf.
Yeah.
That really got me. I can't believe that she wrote that.
I know.
It's like that, and like it's so interesting because like it is a nod to like the fact that she's writing the book, but like nothing like that was ever said in Twilight.
No.
Yeah.
Like
there was
never
no situation that challenged anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Like the whole point is that like this is different because it challenges antiquated gender roles.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and reinforces other ones. And, like,
can you believe? That's all I had for chapter 8.
Yeah. Another thing about chapter 8 is that they didn't name the restaurant that they go to.
True. True.
Yeah, so in Twilight, the restaurant that they go to is called La Bella Italia.
La Bella Italia.
Yeah.
Real restaurant.
Real restaurant, which is cool. It's like, they could have just gone to that one. It would have been a nice nod to the name Bella, I think.
Yeah, it would have been cute.
Why she chose that. But I'm, like, also a little bit butthurt that she didn't make up a restaurant called Beau Italia.
Beau Italia. Like, oh my god. Like, Beau Italia. Beaufort Italia.
Beaufort Italia. Beaufort Italia Swan.
Isabella Italia.
We don't know his middle name.
We don't. It's Italia.
Okay, we can do chapter 9.
Yeah. Chapter 9 is called Theory.
It's the continuation of chapter 8. They're driving home from Port Angeles and having a conversation about Edith being a vampire, basically.
I don't have a ton.
Yeah.
I do have... that I mentioned about before about the hand holding. There's lots of like hand holding in Twilight or Midnight Sun. When you're reading it, it's obvious that they're attracted to each other at this point, but a lot of the physical contact and the hand holding makes it seem much more like serious and advanced.
Yes.
Than it was in Twilight. With them leaving this, I'm like, oh, like. They just went on a date and held hands a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas in Twilight, I was like, Edward kidnapped her and made her eat dinner with him and then drove her home.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot more ambiguous.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about those differences too. I think there's a couple things in the way, in this section in general and in previous sections where the way that Edith talks to Beau is different in the tone that I remember Edward saying things to Bella. There's a couple points in the earlier sections where Edith calls Beau stupid like a couple times. And I don't remember that happening in Twilight.
No.
And also, it might be said in a different way in Twilight, but it's not the same as like stupid.
Yeah.
There's a part in this section where maybe it's when they're eating lunch. Maybe that's the next chapter where Beau's like, oh, am I ever going to like watch you hunt? And Edith is like, no, that's dangerous. And like she says it like in a whisper, and I remember that being a lot more aggressive.
Edward
on
is
Edward's
like,
behalf.
how dare you? Like I
he
just
freaks out. Yeah.
I read that recently, and
Yeah.
he absolutely is like, that will never happen.
Yeah.
That is never a possibility.
Yeah.
Like very sternly, and Bella's just like, bitch, okay,
Yeah, like,
I
calm the
was
fuck
just
down, I didn't know.
asking.
Yeah. Yeah. So things like that are different. The way that
Yeah.
they interact is starting to feel a lot different than the way that Bella and Edward interacted, and a lot of that is because of the way that Stephenie Meyer is writing their genders, intentionally or not. It's starting to seem like Beau is playing more of like a hands-on boyfriend role than Bella was, like being sort of like passive and like, I'll do what you need me to do sort of thing.
What I think I'm getting from how this has been reading is that Stephenie Meyer opened the document of Twilight, and instead of starting fresh with that document open in another tab, she took the document and physically edited it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would have appreciated a more revised edition that didn't try, like, that maybe, like, kept the, like, you can keep the dialogue, but maybe change the narration a little bit.
Yeah.
And, like, actually changed more, I guess. Yeah. Because, like, the way that it's reading, it's like Stephenie Meyer highlighted sections and was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
This cannot be. Yeah. But then kept other things, like, the exact same.
Yeah. I appreciate a couple phrases that are, like, the same because it makes me feel like it's the same story. But I also appreciate where it deviates because that feels more real. It doesn't feel real when it's, like, exactly word for word what Bella was saying or what Edward was saying. For whatever reason, it just doesn't feel as authentic. But
I think she did this way to prove a point.
Yeah,
whereas,
to prove a point.
I
she wrote the whole thing to prove a point.
Yeah. A much, like, richer story if she had just, like, given herself a little more creativity and freedom. Yeah. And, like, actually wrote... and
leaning into gender.
Right.
Instead of being, like, it doesn't exist.
Maybe instead of, like, writing this as, like, a defensive, like, I'm gonna prove everyone wrong. Yeah. Like, writing it to write it and see what you discover along the way. And, like, perhaps she would have learned something. Yeah. And been like, oh, I guess I suppose that it is gendered a little bit. Yeah. In these moments.
But yeah, chapter 9.
Chapter 9. I picked up a comment on page 143 about...
Yeah, so did I. I have that page written down.
About Eleanor
Okay.
being the strongest, and, like, it doesn't necessarily say, like, Eleanor is stronger than my brothers, but, like, it says that Eleanor is, like, someone that Edith wouldn't pick a fight with. Yeah. Or something like that. And it kind of seems like they are setting it up that Eleanor is the brawn and, like, the buff one, which is interesting.
Yeah, I have a different thing from the same page, actually.
Wow.
That really struck me.
I was sitting next to Sam when she read this, and, like, not this specific thing, but this chunk, and she would just laugh, or she would be like, ugh.
So, they're having lunch, Edith and Beau, in the cafeteria.
As you do.
First, they're talking about it being difficult for Edith to be around Beau because of the way he smells. But he says, but you're not hungry now. And she says, why did you think that? He says, your eyes. I have a theory about that. And then, like, goes into, like, the thing about how her eyes are lighter sometimes and sometimes they're darker. And he says people are generally crabbier when they're hungry, right? In Twilight, it's men are generally crabbier when they're hungry.
Interesting. I didn't even pick that up. I absolutely did not pick that up.
But I'm almost positive that Bella is like, I have a theory about that because men are usually crabby when they're hungry.
Oh,
but
so
she didn't
funny.
change it to women.
No.
She changed it to people.
Wow.
Like, such an obvious change that she made.
Oh my god. I want to write her a hate mail. Like, I won't. But, like, it would be so satisfying to, like, write an open letter to Stephenie Meyer and then just send it off to her and know that, like, her publisher or whoever the fuck opens her mail these days, like, opened that and was like, holy fuck, this girl read Life and Death so hard.
Bella says, I told you I had a theory. I've noticed that people, men in particular, are crabbier when they're hungry.
And, like, Beau doesn't say people, women in particular.
Yeah, he just says people.
Because he knows that would be...
false.
False.
Because it's just a false observation.
Yeah.
I think the most jarring part of this whole chapter 9, is the very end.
Fuck me up. What I specifically wrote was, bitch, what the fuck whymst did she change this quote? Stephenie, why? Was exactly what I wrote when I read this. I would love to read the original section of Twilight.
It's iconic. It's so iconic that it's on the back of the book, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
About 3 things I was absolutely positive First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was a part of him, and I didn't know how dominant that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. How beautiful.
Like, so, like, I believe it. It's touching.
I'm into it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
It's iconic.
It's iconic.
Like, I attach the word irrevocably to that paragraph.
Like, about 3 things.
About 3 things.
I was absolutely positive. A vampire. Thirsted for my blood.
I'm in love with him. Yeah, beautiful.
I'm with you. It sums up beautifully.
Yeah,
it's on the back of the book.
Like,
it's in the movie, word for word. It's gorgeous.
Very memorable.
Let's read you what is in
Beaufort.
Life and Death. Beaufort Swan.
There were a few things that I knew for sure. For one, Edith was an actual vampire. For another, there was a part of her that saw me as food. But in the end, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that I loved her more than I'd ever imagined it was possible to love anything. She was everything I wanted, the only thing I would ever want. That's not as interesting, is it?
The third part is not awful.
Yeah.
But it's not as flowery.
Yeah.
And like
nice.
It's not prose.
It's not prose. And one of the things that Stephenie Meyer actually said that she changed was that Beau doesn't speak in flowery language. And it's like, that's such an interesting character change because Bella like loves books. The books that she chose to read would kind of yield that language that she does use, and like that's a huge, like that's one of the only character traits that Stephenie Meyer gives her. And to totally take that away from Beau is to like make him more plain.
Be like, she sees me as food.
Yeah.
I'm a snack. Like, are you kidding? Also, like, an actual vampire.
An actual
like, you
vampire.
could have just said first, Edith was a vampire. Like, okay, let me read you the Twilight quote, but with pronouns changed.
Yeah.
It's not that fucking hard.
Yep.
About 3 things I was absolutely positive. First, Edith was a vampire. Second, there was a part of her, and I didn't know how dominant that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with her.
Like, that's so much nicer. And, like, also, so, like, I know that we were just talking about how we wanted her to change more of the narrative, but, like, I do, like, the parts that I would want her to keep the same were, like, those iconic bits, honestly.
Right.
Because, I don't know, she just didn't do this very well, in my opinion.
Like, the line, like, I don't know if we've gotten to the part where it is yet, but the line, like, since I'm going to hell, I might as well do so thoroughly. Like, that's a great Edward line.
Yeah.
If Edith doesn't say that verbatim.
I don't think that she did.
Well, we'll check in the next couple chapters, because if she doesn't, I will...
Did we get to that part yet?
Hate mail.
Hate mail.
Stephenie Meyer's gonna be getting a letter.
Yeah, again, interesting choices all around.
For chapter 10? Chapter 9. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Chapter 10 is the lunchroom scene we've talked about
a little bit
accidentally, but...
It's called Interrogations. It's the next day at school.
Yeah.
A little bit in class. There's a really interesting conversation with Jeremy that I'd like to unpack.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they have a nice long lunch conversation that's strangely intense.
So let's talk about the difference between the conversation with Jeremy and the conversation that Bella has with Jessica.
Yeah. Before even starting that, I have noticed, and I'm not even sure what it was here. I'll look through it again. But I feel in general like Beau makes more sexual observations than Bella ever did.
I absolutely agree with that. So what happens is in Twilight, Edward can read Jessica's mind when they pull up to school together. A really fun fact about Sam and I is that I set up Sam and her boyfriend currently, and the first time that they walked into a club meeting that we were at together, I played Spotlight by Mute Math, which is the song that plays when Bella and Edward walk into school together for the first time, and Sam almost punched me in the face because she's no fun.
Well,
Anyway, so that's this scene equivalent in the book, and Edward reads Jessica's mind in Twilight and is like, oh, Jessica's gonna ask you these 2 things, which are you secretly dating?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about Edward? Like, what are your feelings for him? Would you like to say what it is in Life and Death? So
there's, like, some interesting sexual remarks that Stephenie Meyer has had the men make here. One of them, I mean, there's one that's made by Beau on page 151. First of all, since we're right there in the same paragraph, I would just like to repeat what I said to Lori earlier, which is that I totally stan Edith Cullen in a pale lavender sweater with the sleeves pushed up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
So he's getting into the car with her. He's noticing the sweater. The sweater hugged her body. I try not to stare. Her hair was wound up into a twist on the back of her head, messy, with strands falling everywhere, and the way it exposed the slender column of her neck was also distracting. I wanted to brush my fingertips down the length of her throat.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is a product of male sexuality as Stephenie Meyer perceives it, or Stephenie Meyer living in the world as a Mormon lady, but for the last, 10, 15 years, she's been experiencing a different world because she's been more in the public and like having to deal with these sexual things that are happening in her texts, and maybe she's like seeing these characters as more sexual than she initially did in Twilight, because that's how Catherine Hardwicke,
possibly
my mom, no, just kidding, I wish, Catherine Hardwicke was interpreting these characters as much more sexual than I believe that they're written in Twilight, which I know that made her stuff and Stephenie clash, I want to say, but I wonder if that's, like, a reflection of that, but it's actually coming across as, like, a very gender thing. Like,
yeah. In Twilight, the equivalent statement is, he wore a light gray knit V-neck shirt with long sleeves. Again, the fabric clung to his perfectly muscled chest. It was a colossal tribute to his face that it kept my eyes away from his body. So she's not looking at his body.
Yeah.
She's looking at his face.
Yeah.
And she's not talking about touching him.
Yeah, she's not gonna initiate any physical contact.
She's not saying, I wanted to brush my fingertips down the length of his throat.
Yeah, yeah. Which, like, whomst. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna do that to you now.
Thanks. Like, again, so Beau is making observations like that. He's made a couple like that about Edith. There was the weird one last time we sat down about Michaela's skirt.
Yeah.
In Twilight, did you already say this? In Twilight,
yeah, the questions that Jessica's about to ask are, how...
She wants to know if we're dating and, like, how you feel. So, and then in Twilight, Bella is like, oh my god, what do I say to her? And then Edward's like, well, if you don't mind... like, you should answer the first one that, like, yes, we are dating. And then the second one, like, I'll be listening.
Right.
But in Life and Death, like, that is not said at all.
Wait, first of all, in Life and Death, the other question is, what base did we get to?
Basically, yeah.
Like, that's literally, like, what Edith translates it to Beau. The heads up that she gives him is, like, she wants to know, like, or he wants to know if we're secretly dating and what base we got to last night. Bitch, what the fuck?
That's so fucked up, Stephenie.
Edward would have... Okay, the thing is, Edward never would have said that to Bella.
Yeah, he would have, like,
even if that
filtered.
Was... Yeah. Even if that's what Jessica was saying.
Yeah.
Like, he never would have said that to Bella.
Yeah, he would have
They don't
mortified.
even think about... Like, he doesn't even think about sex until Eclipse.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, he would never...
Concerned.
Yeah. It just gives me such a different impression of Edith.
Yeah.
Like...
Yes.
So mischievous.
He says, like, what should I... Yeah, she does come across as very mischievous.
I love her.
I love her so much.
Yeah.
He says, what should I say? And she says, that's a good question. I can't wait to hear what you come up with.
Yeah.
And, like, that's it. And then, like, so far in the rest of the chapter, they don't discuss whether or not they're dating.
Yeah. There's no... Like, Edward is the one that decides, like, well, yeah, if you think that you want to, like, then we're dating. Like, yeah. But Edith is, like, kind of throwing the ball into Beau's court and, like...
Making him decide.
Like, we know that Beau's not going to be like, we're dating. Like,
yeah.
You know, I would also like to say on page 153, which is the same area, I had this theory that I don't think I talked about on the podcast, but I have this theory that perhaps vampires could tell when human men got erections because of the blood rush, and I wondered if they could smell it and they could tell that the blood was rushing to a certain area of their body, and I would just like to shout out to myself because in the scene, Beau is blushing and looks over at Edith, who now looks super uncomfortable, and he has the thought like, oh, this must be really hard for her, and it stops him from blushing as hard. And that boner theory confirmed. If you can smell the blush in your face, cheeks, then you can definitely tell when he's like, I love that. I love that. I'm so glad I know that.
It's a great equivalent to being able to smell, like, period blood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Beau has a conversation with Michaela. I don't remember what happens in Twilight, but Beau makes up that he talked to Jeremy about Michaela. He's, like, telling Michaela that Jeremy said these great things about her, and I don't
Yeah.
remember if that happens in Twilight.
I know that they have the conversation like that in Twilight, but I don't remember if Bella truly has the conversation.
Yeah, Beau, like, makes up this whole conversation with Michaela, with Michaela, but Bella, Mike asks her, did Jessica say anything about Monday night? And Bella just says, yeah, she said she had a really good time, and then they just, like, say some more stuff like that, and there's nothing about being like, oh, I didn't actually have this conversation, I'm just trying to get rid of Mike.
Mm-hmm. In the way that Beau was trying to get rid of Michaela.
Yeah, so Beau and Jeremy are not talking about, like, girls at all, which is interesting because I feel like later, the conversation that he has with Jeremy is, he's like, yeah, like, boys talk about these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like, so there's that weird conversation with Michaela, and then there's the weird conversation with Jeremy in class.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. Let's, like, honestly read these side by side.
Sure.
So, in Twilight, Bella sits down in class, and Jessica says, tell me everything. And she wants to know what happened last night. And she says, he bought me dinner and then drove me home. And Jessica's like, how'd you get home so fast? She's like, was it like a date? Do you actually want to meet him there and you just didn't tell me? And then she's like, so he picked you up for school today? And she's like, yes, that was a surprise. And then she's like, are you going to go see him again? And she's like, yes. And then Jessica's like, wow, Edward Cullen.
Wow, Edward Cullen. So what happens in these, I'll pick out a few lines, I guess.
Yeah.
Jeremy opens a conversation with, dang, son, who knew you had that kind of game?
It's literally so different.
And Beau says, I have no game. And he says, please, Edith Cullen, how did you swing that? How does the this has been happening? Is it some kind of secret she doesn't want her family to know? Like, is that why you pretended you were going to the movie with us? And he's like, do you have a genie in a lamp? Did you find some blackmail on her? Did you trade your soul to the devil? Like.
Yeah, in addition to, like, this conversation being, like, Jeremy digging for sexual details about Edith, it's also, like, him being kind of mean to Beau.
Yeah, he's shocked that, like, Beau could land Edith.
Yeah, and he's, like, being actively malicious about it.
Yeah, and so he says, how much did you get in the bargain? Bet it was a pretty wild night. And then Beau says, I was starting to get pissed, but I knew he would twist whatever reaction I showed to make it seem like something else. And so he said, I answered calmly, it was an early night, home by 8. It was just dinner and a ride home, Jeremy. And then he says, what about this morning, though? You were still with her. And he says, still? No. You thought she was with me all night? No. And then Jeremy's like, well, you were in her car. And he's like, well, she picked me up for school this morning. And Jeremy's like, really? Please tell me you at least made out with her. Anything. And Beau says, it's not like that. Which, like, I agree. No, they haven't made out, but it kind of is like that. Like, it's a romantic relationship.
Yeah, it is. And then, but there is an equivalent, and I remember there being an equivalent here.
There is. It's the same as in Twilight. Yeah.
Jessica keeps pressing Bella for more details.
Yeah.
She wants to know what they talked about. Oh, she wants to know if Bella likes him.
Yeah.
And she's just, like, pushing for those sorts of details. Like, how much do you like him?
Yeah, which Jeremy doesn't seem concerned with at all. He seems like it's a given that someone would like Edith, but, like, doesn't believe that Edith would like Jeremy.
I think that the equivalent of, like, it's not like that is Bella saying, Jessica asking, how much do you like him? And she says, too much, more than he likes me. But I don't know how I can help that.
Yeah, and there's nothing like that here. But Jeremy goes on to say, that is hands down the most disappointing story I've heard in my entire life. I take back everything I said about your game. Obviously, it's just some pity thing. Maybe I should try to look more pathetic if that's what Edith is into. It won't take her long to get bored with you, I bet. Beau just said his facade slipped for a second. He caught the change and grinned a little smug. Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
Yeah, so there's like this really interesting difference between Jeremy and Beau's relationship than Jessica and Bella's, because I feel like at this point, at the end of that conversation, Jessica is like happy for Bella and just like wants to know the details, and is like, when they go to lunch and she's like, you're not sitting with us today, are you? And she's like, no, I don't think so. That's like feels much more hostile when it came from Jeremy, and I'm wondering if it's because I don't know, it feels like in Life and Death, it feels like Jeremy's not that into Michaela and is just really into Edith. Mm-hmm. But in Twilight, it's Mike with Jessica and Bella, two humans. Yeah. So it's not like...
That's true. Yeah. There's a difference in species there that, like, makes it so that, like... Yeah.
So, like, Edith is obviously more attractive.
It's also, like, I think that Jessica, while, like, Edward can read her mind and tell that she's having jealous thoughts about Bella that are not very nice.
Yeah.
Never vocalizes those thoughts to Bella.
Yeah,
and I don't think would ever.
Yeah, and when, like, later in the series, I don't know even know if it's in Twilight or if it's in New Moon, when she's upset with Bella and is, like, not really her friend for a little while, it's because of she's jealous of, like, Mike's feelings for Bella.
Right.
Not because, like, not because of Edward.
It's absolutely so different, the relationship that they have, because, like, I don't hate Jessica.
Yeah.
I do hate Jeremy.
Yeah, he's, like...
Jeremy's a dick. He has, like, he has
nothing to offer.
Redeeming qualities. Yeah, like, Jessica is funny, and, like, she's, like, smart, and, like,
and she was
witty.
A really good friend to Bella when she first moved to school, and...
But, like, Jeremy doesn't have any of that to offer.
Yeah.
He's just kind of, like, a dick, which I guess is, like, that's a realistic portrayal of a man. But it's not very forgiving. Yeah. And it's not very equivalent to Jessica Stanley.
So the rest of the chapter is Beau and Edith having lunch together alone in the cafeteria. There's a really interesting moment where Beau offers to carry Edith's bag.
Yeah. And Edith is like, bitch, this is really heavy.
And then, like... holds it with her pinky finger out to him. And I just think it's interesting that, like, I don't know, it's just very gendered. Yeah. It's a gendered action. Holding the door open for her, trying to carry her stuff. He opens a car door for her at one point, and it's like he knows that he doesn't have to because she's so physically superior. She can do it faster, better, stronger. Like. And then... so he's literally just doing it because it's, like, what he thinks he's supposed to be doing, like, as a guy. Yeah.
Also, like, I... caught this moment where in this chapter Beau is talking about how the weather is gonna be, like, gloomy the next few days or something. Yeah. And he says he smiles and he's like, there was something better than sunshine. Yeah. And I was like, you're telling me that Beaufort Swan can say something so fucking precious?
That's
like,
so cute.
There's something better than sunshine, but he
like
can't
the best
say
line
that.
I've ever read.
He's like, yeah. I literally wrote it down in cursive because I was like, that's so cute.
Oh, and then there's also, like, a section where we kind of get a small interaction between Archie and Edith. Yes. And as soon, like, it's kind of implied that maybe Archie is smiling at Beau, and it's like, wow, I ship Archie and Beau.
Oh, yeah. Archie and Beau are gay.
Yeah, I ship them harder than I ship Alice and Bella. Like, yeah. I mean, the conversation that they have is mostly the same, and we already talked about some of the tone differences. Yeah. And those little details.
But effectively, I think the chapter is, like, the bulk of the differences between Jeremy and Beau's interaction and not really with Edith and Beau's interaction, because it's a lot more of that plot stuff. Yeah. Where they're talking about logistics of, like, what do I eat? And, like, can I eat this pizza? Like, yes, I can, but I'm gonna have to throw up later. That kind of thing. Hunting. Like, it's a lot of the plot.
Details about vampire lore. The next chapter, I think that's chapter where the Blacks come over for dinner, maybe? It's called Complications.
Oh, it's the chapter where they watch a movie together in biology class.
Ah, that's right. Yeah. So we'll read the next couple of chapters. We're approaching halfway through the book, and we're approaching the meadow scene.
Which is where Midnight Sun drops off, so...
I'm excited to meet the Cullens more in depth.
Me too. Yeah. I'm lit for that, actually.
We didn't meet any new characters in this section. No. Except for, like, that weird gang in Port
Angeles.
Angeles.
But for now, I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave off. I'm lit for this. It's really picking up.
Yeah, it's really great. I was having a hard time putting it down yesterday, but we're reading chunk by chunk, so...
we don't have any information that the other doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is for the best, because I feel like we would just get carried away
I would
talking
really
about the rest
scream.
of it. Yeah.
So, for now...
Looked at your notes and it said blush/boner theory confirmed canon. Let's call this episode Boner Theory.
Boner Theory. This episode is called Boner Theory. All right. See you next time. That's all, forks.
Thank you for listening to Gender Forking. To stay updated about the podcast or to contact us, follow us on Twitter at genderforking or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/genderforking. For more Twilight content from us, you can follow our blog at bowlingshirtbellas.tumblr.com. If you haven't read Life in Death and you aren't reading along at home, visit Bowling bowlingshirtbellas.tumblr.com/genderforking for plot summaries and more information about the text. For other inquiries, you can email us at bowlingshirtbellas@gmail.com. The music you are hearing is Thursday in Snow Reprise by Blank Kit.